Hello and welcome to Not Fake News. Got a breaking story, going to get straight to it, out of Liberty Writers by Lindsay Bruce. Breaking, President Trump just picked a new national security advisor. This is not a guy you want to mess with. President Trump just picked Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster to be our new national security advisor, and he could not have made a better choice. Lieutenant General McMaster is a combination of warrior, intellectual, and a leader. He was recently recognized by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. McMaster is a West Point graduate who's most known for his role in the Battle of 73 Easting. He was a captain, commanding Eagle Troop of the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Even though his group was outnumbered by the Iraqi forces, their 9 tanks easily defeated the enemy's forces. Lieutenant McMaster isn't just a muscle guy, though. He's extremely intelligent as well. He holds a master's in arts and a physics degree in degrees in American history from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In 1997, McMaster published The Dereliction of Duty, a book that criticized the military officers of the Vietnam War era for not challenging President Lyndon B. Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara over the Vietnam strategies. This general is not afraid to speak up when needed, and he understands what needs to be done to win the war. In the video below, McMaster explains how the military needs to work together to defeat our enemies. He says, we've got to work across the whole Army because the future course of the Army is what 51% or more of the Army believes it is every day. So you can't work in a vacuum. You've got to go to work with everybody on it, McMaster said. Just listening to this great man, and you can tell the President Trump made the right choice. Lieutenant General McMaster will have to face a new type of enemy now, the dishonest liberal media. My money is on Lieutenant General.
How could we have spent the alleged $2 to $3 billion in Iraq, so-called training Iraqi troops who performed so apparently miserably around Mosul and that general area against ISIS? It's important when you look at security force assistance and building security forces that we understand the political dimension of that problem, right? We have to put the politics at the center of that even. Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll look at building security forces
I'm backing it up and making it louder.
How could we have spent the alleged $2 to $3 billion in Iraq, so-called training Iraqi troops who performed so apparently miserably around Mosul and that general area against ISIS? It's important when you look at security force assistance and building security forces that we understand the political dimension of that problem, right? We have to put the politics at the center of that even. Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll look at building security forces as a program. Hey, we need to build their capacity. We need to organize, train, and equip them. But what we really need to do is to make sure that they're under proper leadership. Their leadership is representative to the degree that they are legitimate in the eyes of their population, and that they have the degree of motivation and so forth to be able to accomplish the missions they'll be asked to accomplish. So I think in both Afghanistan and in Iraq, we didn't pay enough attention to the political dynamic. For example, in Afghanistan, and we're trying to overcome all of this now in Afghanistan. But in Afghanistan, if you think about the way the military campaign was waged, it was waged really mainly through proxy, forces, through militias, Mujahideen-era militias mainly, and we empowered them with money, with intelligence advisors, and with special forces. And then we collapsed the Taliban regime. But once we did that, the way that we conducted that war set conditions for state capture of state institutions and functions by these militias. The militias really morphed into criminalized patronage networks that were motivated by a desire to consolidate power in advance of a post-U.S. Afghanistan. And so actually, many of these, criminal networks became stakeholders in state weakness, because it's the weakness of these institutions that gave them impunity, freedom of action, and so forth. And so it's critical to put the politics at the center. What happened in Iraq is that the security forces were increasingly captured by Shia Islamist militias, some of them associated with Iran. These institutions were not. We look at them, we mirror image sometimes. Hey, they're an army. They must be like a neutral state institution, right? But of course they're not. It's a battleground for influence and control of those instruments of power are very important, right, to these groups. So in Iraq, if you think about what happened shortly after we left, the military left in Iraq, Prime Minister Maliki took a number of actions, placing the vice president under arrest. I mean, all sorts of things. But within the military, what was happening in the Army and in the Ministry of Interior Forces was really an elimination, of Sunni Arab, Sunni Turkmen leaders, and they became increasingly Shia-led organizations. When that happened, of course, the Sunni Arab population says, well, they don't represent me. They're not going to protect me. Who's going to protect me? And then you begin to look for militias and others who can protect you. And this is how ISIL gets their foot back in the door, is to portray themselves as patrons and protectors of populations that now see the instruments of state power as aggressors against them. And of course, once ISIL controls territory, then what they can do is they can intimidate and coerce people such that you can't recruit out of those areas anymore. If your son joins the army, I'm going to kill your whole family. And so this is the same thing that happened between 2004 and 2006 in Iraq. What's happened with ISIL again? Now, we reversed that through the surge, but it wasn't just a surge. It was a political strategy that aimed to move Iraq's communities toward political accommodation, a political accommodation that would remove support for extremists. There are subordinate efforts to that political strategy. There was an external diplomatic strategy. There was a strategy to develop security forces to get rid of the most malign and sectarian actors, within those institutions, to make those institutions more representative, to reprofessionalize them. There were other elements of this, but of course, none of these efforts were irreversible, as we've seen. And if you look at ISIL's campaign, it was the campaign for Al-Qaeda in Iraq campaign from 2004 to 2006 on fast forward. And so it's critical. I think what you learn is you have to put the politics at the center. There's a great security force development, security sector reform expert named Andrew Rathmell, who's written about this extensively, putting politics at the center of these efforts. And I think we have to recognize that these are contested spaces, right? You can't just and we've learned this in other places too, right? I mean, we were developing Malian armed forces as a bulwark against Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. And we know large numbers of them defected and fought for the Tuaregs and Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. We've had problems, this is what political scientists call principal agent, right? Problems. And we've seen it in Yemen, we've seen it working with certain partners in certain areas as well. So I think what you need strong political leadership that's representative and determined. You want a positive example? I think you look at the Philippines. You look at Colombia as a great example, right? What was the prognosis for Colombia, in the late 90s? Look what happens under strong leadership with U.S. support. I think Korea is a positive example. Okay, it didn't look good in 1953, though, right? You had a country that was ravaged by decades of war. You had a country with no infrastructure, with an illiterate population, and a corrupt government. It didn't look good. But with sustained commitment over time, development of civil society groups, development of political reforms, U.S. commitment over time, you have success.
Well, first of all, I like him. Of course, it seems great. And could you get anyone who knows more about that issue of, the vacuum in Iraq? Now, this guy laid it down. I mean, you can't get more clear than that. even like Trump would say, a high school student, a dumb high school student can understand that. And you know, who also knows that? The Obama administration. Yep. Obama himself. They knew that. And not only him, but Bush, they knew that. They absolutely knew that. And that's why they did it. Because they did it 7 times before. I mean, our government, they know what they're doing. They knew that this would happen. That they would build some sort of a terrorist organization would come out of this. And they did. It's not like it's anything new to them. This guy looks like he knows what he is doing. And I am looking very much forward to seeing what he's going to do in the coming months. Him and Mad Dog Mattis and Priebus. Is it Priebus? I forgot. I gotta look up. Anyway, that's it. Subscribe below if you haven't already subscribed. And if you like what we're doing here at Not Fake News, make sure you hit that like button on the video. It's very important and it means a lot to us. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you in a couple minutes with the next video.